Go ahead and get started. Okay. Good evening, everyone. This is Ron. I have been looking forward to today. I mean, this afternoon. I been a long day for me, but like I said, I was looking forward to this. So we continue where we were this weekend. Uh, George started explaining to us the seven principles of Mayat, and yesterday we got on to some bit, but we concentrated more on answering some questions, and that led to a different discussion. So let's start today to see if we have any questions, anything from yesterday, or anything new that may have cropped up, and we'll go from there. Anyone? Okay. Pastor, while my mind is on it, because I forgot it yesterday, just want to remind everybody that we will not meet next week. Probably should have done that before we start recording, but just how my mind works sometimes. So we might want to say it again.
Yeah.
At the very end. So grab our attention, George, if you want to pick up where you left off, or just take it as you will.
Okay, well, again, good evening, everyone. And again, I'm blessed to be able to have the opportunity to see everyone and to continue to share, with our interest, respect, and reference to the seven principles of Mayat before we go into the 42 laws of negative confessions or the 42 laws of Mayat. And, again, someone had asked me, well, what are the seven principles of Mayat? So what I wanted to do was just say what we have is truth, we have justice, we have harmony, we have balance, we have order, we have righteousness, and reciprocity. Those are the seven principles. And what we thought that would be helpful is to really, go into the seven principles. And then at the same time, again, just kind of reflect on what it means, to ourselves. And more importantly, the goddess Mayat, what was the whole purpose in terms of us being able to have that oneness or that relationship in terms of our ancestors being able to share with us the oldest laws and the morality, in terms of what was recorded, in terms of spiritual instructions. And as we, compare, the laws that we have with regards to the commandments, as we, look at the laws that we have in terms of the 42, I think it's just interesting to know that Mayat was the embodiment, of what the seven principles were all about. And so we had some discussion previously, on the principle of truth. And I think we shared that. And yesterday, there was some conversation in reference to Barbara and others sharing about the importance of balance. And that's where I was going to pick up tonight in terms of just being able to have some discussion in terms of what balance means to us in reference to our perception, but more importantly, how it was, given to us, by the goddess Mayat. So it says that balance, is a state in which the internal and external environments of an individual or group how are aligned with the goddess, aligned with nature, aligned with the rest of creation. And so when we think about balance, we try to basically look at it in various aspects of one's journey.
George, may I?
Yes, please.
You said in regards to the goddess. Who is the goddess?
Okay, and we talk about, again, Mayat, but we're talking about Mother Nature. And so when we look at again, the cosmos, and we look at the earthly, well, the earth consciousness, and we think about it in terms of nature. I think I had mentioned maybe before that nature was our first teacher. In terms of our ancestors being able to look at astrology, look at numerology, look at, how one is able to appreciate how everything came into an existence. And I think existence, is that experience where they say opposites meet. And so as so above, so below. But again, when we talk about being in alignment or being aligned, we're talking about being aligned with Elohim, being aligned with Mother Nature, and at the same time, the rest of creation. So that's what I wanted to refer to when I was saying, the internal and external environments. And that's the goddess. So, again, that's the embodiment of Mayat. When we talk about the female, nature, the female nurturing, and that's where the 7 principles came about. And she was the embodiment of that. That resonates.
Isn't nature and all of that an aspect of the Creator?
Absolutely. And so when we were talking about a little bit yesterday in terms of going back to look at the creation story, again, when we talk about in the beginning, God created the heavens and earth. So all of that is part of, that embodiment when we talk about the goddess and we talk about Mother Nature. So yes, Audrey, that would involve all of creation. Anything that exists. Go ahead. I'm Pastor. Spiritually exists.
Unknown color.
Are you saying that in regards to what Audrey asked? So you're saying that of course, these are aspects of the creation, right? Of the Creator, rather, right?
Yes.
And the governing principles of everything that was created, inclusive of the universe, is the pathway that these principles lay out. It is the order, it is the guiding forces, rather, they are the guiding forces that we are to live by. So these are actually the laws of the Creator, with nature being one aspect of it. Does that make sense? What I'm saying is, nature is one aspect of it. Another aspect of it is the human body, period. Another aspect of it is the soul, the mind. All of these intangible things are aspects of the Creator. Does that make sense, Audrey, George?
Yes.
Okay.
And what you're saying, I was actually looking at a scripture in Psalms 19:7.
Mm-hmm.
And this is in the Message Bible, but in the King James Version, it talks about the law, of the Lord is perfect, converting the soul, and the testimony of the soul makes wise simple. But in the Message Bible, you mentioned about a pathway, but what it says is that the revelation of God is whole. And when you speak about a holistic, the mind, body, soul, and spirit, and it says, and pulls our lives together. And I think that's the oneness when we speak about Elohim, and we speak about, again, in terms of oneness. And it says that the signposts of God are clear and points out the right road. And so when we say pathway, or we talk about being able to read the signs of the time, or we talk about being able to appreciate what was written, it just gives us a better perspective, in terms of the wholeness of what we're saying, the mind, body, soul. I think, Ron, you had your hand up.
Yes, sir. As I look at these, as you talk and mention them in some of the things you said about truth is the ability to understand what is real versus what is not real. And now we look at balance and we talk about the goddess and Mother Nature. It simplifies it a little bit to me to look at it and say this is talking about the internal of who I am. As we moved on this journey, a year or so, a couple of years ago, however long it's been, we really saw and started emphasizing femininity and what that means and how that fills in who we are. So when we talk about Mother Nature, we're talking about the goddess, and we're talking about, if I see that femininity in me and I understand it, I recognize that I am, as I embrace that, there's nothing external to me. So the Mother Nature that we talk about is you embracing who you are, which means you embrace all of nature, you embrace all of creation, you embrace every living creature, including mankind. So I think it's just another way of looking at ourselves from a different perspective and saying the same thing, I guess.
So, Ron, so truth is reality, embracing reality, right?
Right.
And if you don't embrace reality, it is impossible to be balanced.
Yes.
So if you don't embrace truth, it's impossible to be balanced, and you continue to live in a chaotic space.
And it is impossible to embrace truth if you see the world as being external or outside of you. All of this has to be embraced as being a part of who we are, and the good, the bad, and the ugly.
So what you're actually saying is, I think, and tell me if I'm right, you have to embrace truth before you are able to recognize the spiritual essence of everything that is.
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that also, Pastor, is not only recognizing the truth that we study and the truth that George is laying out for us now. Part of that truth is you have a truth that I don't have, and I have something that I deal with that you don't have. All of that has to be figured out as well. Those experiences are part of each and every one of our truths that we have to reckon with.
And that's why we come together.
Yes.
They're pieces of the puzzle. So now that we see that truth is paramount if we want balance, I suppose now it's time to see what balance is, Mr. George.
Yeah, and I think with balance, if we look at it, in terms of how we spend our wakening hours, where we spend our wakening hours, it would be the same in terms of truth, looking at it, where if everything starts at home, and I think that home was mentioned before, for me, I think about like for my 4 empowerment zones, I think about home, I think about, the place, where I work, I think about my presence in the community, but more importantly, I think about my soul and spirit. And when we talk about our soul and our spirit, if Elohim, Elohim is love, Elohim is spirit. We are love and we are spirit. That's who we were created to be. And at the same time, to be able to share that light, that love, that energy to others, it brings us to that point when we talk about balance. We're talking about where new life is generated and new possibilities come into being. So if we're talking about working from the inside out, instead of looking at things from the world perspective or looking at it from what we see with our eyes, can we now have an appreciation to do some introspection, some self-examination, to realize that we want to be able to appreciate our intuition, where it's our spirit that we are responding to from the inside, from our spirit. And so this is where, again, when we talk about where new life is generated, and I know that there was some conversation that we had before, how can a man, be, what was the word in the Bible? We say Lazarus, how can a man be born again? And I see it,
Nicodemus.
Yeah.
Nicodemus, I see it in this, in the Kushite teaching. I see it in the principles of Mayat, where we had that opportunity to experience the newness of life by being able to individually and collectively grasp the meaning of these 7 principles. And I think all of the principles sort of work together for the good, but I think there's an African proverb that says, like, let me just, say it. It was an African proverb that says, the world is equally divided between good and evil. Your next act will tilt the scale. So again, in terms of how we see ourselves, knowing that we are Elohim, but now being able to walk in the principle, walk in the authority, walk in the belief that now I can see the importance of balance. Pastor, go ahead. I see your hand, finger up.
So the the newness of life. When you mentioned that, what came to mind is when you mentioned it rather in regards to Nicodemus, what came to mind is that what that actually says, you must return to beginning before you can have renewed life, before you can be balanced. And balance is important for creation. You can't create unless you balance. That makes sense?
Yes.
So you can't be creative before you are balanced. Then that also means if you cannot be balanced unless you return to beginning, you cannot create unless you're balanced. So everything takes us back to beginning. Everything. Each of the principles have us centered at that place of beginning. And when I say it takes us back to beginning, I'm not talking about, of course, I'm not talking about geographical journey, but I'm not talking about traveling back to beginning, even in my minds. I'm talking about the awareness.
The consciousness.
That we are constantly, that we live in beginning. The awareness of that. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Being aware, constantly aware that we are at beginning, that helps us see reality. That brings us to a place of balance. That gives us opportunity to bring into existence those things which are beneficial to humanity.
Yes.
I'm done.
And when we talk about, beginning, and I know we've had the conversations on previous sessions, is that there were the 2 scriptures, one in the Old Testament, Ron, that you so eloquently have talked about and we've spoken in terms of Genesis, but you also have the Gospel of John, the first chapter, verse 1. And it says, well, in the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was God. So when we talk about word, there's words that are often spoken on our time together, whether it's, again, balance, which has been spoken of many times. We spoke of the word loving kindness. We spoke of the word, in terms of harmony. And so these words have power, but there's a purpose of returning to beginning. And I think we are seeing it now more from a connection of not just who we are, but being one with our ancestors, being one with nature, being one with the goddess, being one with the I am that I am. So I think it's relevant that we're able to see how these all words all come together for the good, but for each of us trying to seek for self-consciousness, that we're able to appreciate cosmic consciousness. And so I think that returning to the beginning has its purpose. And I think we all are seeking, to find that truth, and now to be able to move from what we know to what we need to do, or moving with the spirit, so to speak, in terms of how is all of this flowing. So just trying to, again, share these 7 principles and just look at how it relates to us individually, but now putting it in the macro, where we all can have a sense of beginning to know what we may feel led and called to do to bring loving kindness to the universe, to humanity. Go ahead, Ron.
I was just thinking while you were talking, something Pastor said about when you were talking about being creative and doing what is best for mankind. That isn't always something that's measurable, but we go back to truth and we see what's real. The measurement is us. If you look at it from any other perspective, you may not always see it because it looks chaotic. We have wars going on. The Congress in the U.S. seems to be at odds all the time. So all these things have been put in motion, but they don't look positive sometimes when you look at them. But when you go back to truth and you see what is real, you know who you are. And you see it. How many times have we said, we're in a good place? You feel that. You feel the vibration of it. So we become the measurement, and the action part of it may not always be recognizable for something that you can look at it and say, hey, this is taking place because of this or that. That is why it is so important for us to have these sessions and to reinforce each other and ask questions and see where we are and make sure that we stay on the same page. So not only is it beneficial for Ron to be balanced, for Pastor to be balanced, for George to be balanced, and Audrey and everybody else, but it is important for us to be balanced together as we move to a place of harmony and we all working together for the same goal. So
balancing, the way you described it, Ron, balance is when we are vibrating at the frequency of the universe.
Yes.
And we don't have to be doing or saying the exact same thing in order for all of us to be vibrating with the frequency of the universe at all times.
That is correct. In fact, it's almost impossible because we all have different experiences, but we have the same desire.
So vibrating at the same frequency of the universe is what brings about change. I know for some of the people who are on the phone, may not be saying what we're talking about. I wish you would, if you don't ask questions, if you don't know how to form the question, just say you have a question, and then I or someone would try to pull it all together for you in order to give you some clarity. Because we can sit here and talk. If you don't understand it, then we're not teaching. So please help us with questions and comments.
Because Ron,
I have a question.
yeah, go ahead, Arthur.
I heard what you were saying, Ron, about us being the, I forget exactly what words, but you use, but us being sort of a check for balance. But isn't also truth, like when you talk about checks and balances, isn't also truth a check for balance
Yes, ma'am.
in terms of the
maybe
greater good?
maybe I said it wrong, but what I'm saying is, if we look for signs outside of us, if we're looking at the chaos that's going on in this country, the chaos that's even going on in this state, and look at the world affairs, it kind of throws you off to think that this is it looks counteractive to what we're hoping for. None of it looks like harmony,
Sure.
but the harmony is inside of you. You are the harmony. So as we move to that place, we become that measuring stick that we need to see. We become the assurance that we're on the right page. We're doing the right thing. We are searching for truth, and that doesn't stop. So no matter what it comes to our ears or to our eyes, nothing stops that search and desire for truth. And that is our measurement, that we stay on that path, that truth becomes paramount to everything that we do. That's what I was trying to say.
Okay, I got you.
So, first of all, it's virtually impossible to teach these 7 foundational principles without, referring back and going forward to the principles. It's virtually impossible to do that because they are inextricably tied together. When I listen to Jordan, I listen to Archie's question, I listen to Ron's questions and responses, I hear if in order for us to be who we were created to be, we first of all must recognize the reality of truth. And what is truth? Truth is being aware of how the universe, how everything was brought into order and the expectations of it. Now, the 42 laws or principles explains what truth looks like more than the next principle of balance, but it explains balance also. So the 42 explains all of these 7 principles, and that's what makes it difficult to talk about one at a time without touching others. Because if you think about what we've been talking about balance, we've been talking about order. Because when you talk about the chaos, the order is in us.
Yes.
You see where I'm coming from?
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
Pat, as you're speaking, we spoke of the word harmony. And in that principle, it says each expression must be authentic and express fully all that it is created to be. It is only through authenticity that harmony can truly be achieved and occur naturally when each entity is being true to itself, to its spiritual reality. So again, all of it works together for the good, but it's just, in that whole concept, it all connects. And again, that's, the different expressions that is being spoken, but it would be the same in terms of how do we balance or how do we see harmony when we talk about how do we react or respond to things. Pastor.
So balance is vibrating at the same frequency of the universe, which means that you are you and the creator and creation are one at that frequency. Balance and harmony are different. Balance speaks to our relationship or being in vibration with the universe, right? Harmony speaks to our interactions with each other. Our choir has different parts in a song, but when they sing, they are in harmony. Am I making sense?
Yes.
So harmony, the harmony of all of this is predicated upon how we deal with each other. And more importantly, not how we relate to each other in terms of those of us who are on this journey of truth, but the most important thing is how we relate to those who are not in harmony, who are not in balance. Because the objective is to bring people into balance and bring them into harmony with each other without even having to say this. Our actions, our words, the way we teach, the way we talk to each other casually, all of that is reflective of truth, balance, harmony. The whole thing, is it not?
Certainly. Yes.
So George, the burden to teach it individually, not that you don't necessarily have to do that, I think, because I think it's impossible, you know?
Absolutely. And I think, and what I'm hearing too is not just in terms of humanity, but you're also talking about dealing with the animal life, the plant life,
Yes.
that everything that have breath, praise ye the Lord. And so there has to be a respect for all living creatures. And again, it relates to, like I said, again, the animals and the plants.
And that's harmony.
That's harmonies. Yep. So with the organic life, or when we talk about so above, so below, the galaxy, and the cosmos is in alignment. And it's just amazing just to see, how creation, just through us being able to appreciate it from the science, have us to understand when we talk about, spirituality is unseen science and science is seen spiritually. This is something that, again, that have been left out, but our ancestors were saying that this is all part of that oneness that they had a desire for, to appreciate how they were able to not just educate themselves, but how nature educate them in terms of knowing when to plant, when to reap, when to do what they need to do. But that's just, the creation or story itself. So it's hard to, like you say, Pastor, maybe to teach it, but I think what's important for us is how do we have discernment? How do we seek the truth? And I think that's our desires for even just being in oneness with each other is seekers of truth. And so I believe that, we're receiving the manifestation of our desires to be able to understand what does the scripture mean, what does the principles mean, and how are they related. I think I might have shared, Pastor, we have the 7 principles of Mayat, but there's also the Kabbalion, the 7 principles of Tahuti. And I mean, I don't want to go into that tonight, but it was just interesting to look at how the principle of balance, I say, where we have the feminine energy, that birth, life in existence, but then we have the patron of knowledge and wisdom that Tahuti, was sharing in terms of us being able to understand how it all works together, the oneness. And so I think it comes back to all of these principles where we can go into order. And order is something, again, that is a state of being which things are arranged in ways that are uncluttered. they're free, we have access and it's clear. So I think to go back and to appreciate, if God is love and we created in God's image, then we are the creators having a human experience. We are the creators that create the thoughts, that create the things. So are we creating seven principles of AI, in a way that it could be?
George, hold 1 second. Would you check and make sure your phones are muted, please?
Well, I thought George was finished, but I have a question once he's done.
Okay,
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm done. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, You sure?
Yeah, no, no. And the bottom line is these, the principles of Mayat is the embodiment of the seven principles. So, okay, Levon is saying okay.
Mayat is feminine, Tahuti is masculine.
Yes.
So we talk about energy forces here. We're talking about, right now, we're talking about the feminine principles of the forces that guides us through this life.
Yes. Thank you, Pat. Appreciate that. Yeah, but go ahead, Evelyn.
So does the seven principles align with the seven chakras?
I don't see that when I look at them. They probably do. I'm not going to say yes. I'm not going to say no, but I never looked at it in that regard. And I don't think that I've ever seen it compared to the chakras. Have you, George?
Well, when we look at the heart chakra, it talks about love is divine power. So if we have the power because of who we are, then we have the power to change things. But I think that if we look at it through the root chakra to the crown chakra.
Would you mute your phone, please? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it has relevance.
Well, I agree. I think, George, that when you say the heart chakra, I think each chakra is inclusive of all seven of these principles.
Mm-hmm.
Each chakra, and the delineation of the principles is simply giving us, hopefully, a clear understanding of of the concepts that we were created with, and the concepts that we live by. I think that, and the reason I say all of that is because when I look at truth, when I look at balance, when I look at order, when I look at harmony, when I look at those things, I see that all of them are intertwined. There is no separation between them. Mm-hmm. And the reason they are written the way they are is because that's how we think. We do not think in terms of all of these principles at once, when in reality they are operating all at once. Mm-hmm. There is no space between them. There is no, well, you do truth first, you do balance, you do order. All of these come into play at the same time. Am I right? Yes. I mean, Evelyn, does that help you?
It does. Like you said, you hadn't looked at it that way. And
you, Evelyn. See again?
Say one more time.
We could barely.
I said, hold on a minute, okay? Hold on.
Okay.
Hey, good evening, everyone.
Wait a minute, George. Go ahead, Evelyn.
Okay. So Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but and you said you never looked at it that way as far as with the 7 chakras or whatever. But I think it's something that I'll look more into it, because for some reason that just came to me. And I know nothing is separate, not even, well, yeah, I'll just leave it right there. Let me process it and look more into it, okay? But I hear
Okay.
you.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
And
thank
Pastor,
you.
well,
Uh-huh.
and Evelyn and everyone else, I appreciate her sharing that, because, looking at the chakras and knowing that again, the world's oldest recordings or sources in terms of spirituality and morality instructions, the crown chakra, says that spirituality is knowing who you are, letting go, enlightenment, becoming enlightened and awareness. And so I think that, again, it's all who we are, and just being able to appreciate how wonderful and marvelous we are made. There's a lot that goes into this beginning. And
That crown chakra sounds like truth, doesn't it? Knowing who you are and that sort of thing.
That's what I was going to say. All of it is energy. We're talking about energy here. So as Pastor said, it's defined so we can see it, but it's all the same. It all works together. So her observation there, to me, is spot on. I don't see how we could separate them.
Well, as I said, again, and as we all are saying, all of it, works together for the good. And I mean, we're covering it. I'm listening to what is being said, and we've basically, dealt with 5 of the principles just in our dialogue tonight. And we didn't cover justice. And again, just looking at justice from a standpoint where we talk about equity for all persons, for all creatures, you know what I mean, for the planet, which all of these, rely, for life. So just looking at justice, not in terms of the judicial system, but knowing that there are laws that we live by, but at the same time, which law, when we talk about,
George, before we move forward, the other George had a question.
Thanks, Pastor. My bad, G. Go ahead, bro.
Hey, thank you, Reverend Richard and Mr. George out of Philly. You on your A game today, and I like it. Keep up the good work. One of the things that Reverend Richard said that was profound a couple of minutes ago, the harmony comes in for how we interact. And one of the things Reverend Richard stated a long, long time ago that I really wrestled with was, when you give, should not have an ulterior, not even a thank you. The truth of that is for the giver. You got to know how to give out here. So that's the truth. And to the person receiving, there's another aspect of truth in the receiver was given the solid. So my truth is different from your truth. Your truth may be different from mine. As an example, it's been stated that the female makes more money than the male. And in looking at that and applying my own experiences, what I see of experience of others, could it be that the female is making more money because the male is eating most of her debt or most of the debt? Meaning that if a married couple, if the husband is eating most of the debt or all of the debt, then the female should make more money. Could it be that their uncle is helping his sister in eating some of her debt? Once I say that, how do you perceive that? That's where the harmony comes in, of how to embrace or how you look at my truth and vice versa. So the balance and the truth, some of them will be shared, some of them will not be shared. It's just that when Reverend Richard was teaching us how to give, that was only my interpretation. And Reverend Richard, please correct me if I'm wrong. You were just giving instructions to the giver. You didn't give any instructions to the person who was receiving. So that's the truth of giving. When you give, you should know how to separate yourself from what you're giving, and you shouldn't even look for a thank you. So the harmony comes in of how do you deal with my truth and how do I deal with your truth? And Red, go ahead, Red.
Yeah, when I was talking about giving, it was on the heels of a question about receiving thanks for every time you give someone something. If they don't thank you, it doesn't matter. If you're giving because of you want to thank you, then you are trying to buy adoration. That is not really giving. Now, as far as the example that you gave, that is talking about in a material world, not in a spiritual world. The other part of that is this: money should never come into play in a relationship. Beyond being a tool, that's it. It doesn't matter how much you make, that doesn't matter. Now, the problem with this is this, and if you permit me for a second, Brother George. The problem with this is, what the example sounds to me like it is an effort to control with money. Now, the other part of that is, as I'm seeing it is that if you're not eating part of the debt, you are taking care of your responsibility. And when it comes to money, it doesn't matter who makes what. It's taking care of your responsibility. And if you want to deal with it materially, there is absolutely no money that I have that Phoebe does not have access to. Why? Because money is a tool to provide our sustenance. That's it. Spiritually, when we look at that, we have turned the apple cart over. Why? Because in the beginning, the male was the hunter-gatherer, meaning that the provider, the warrior, the one who governed the society was a female or feminine energy. When a male governed the society, that male had a cadre of females that he consorted with when he was going to make decisions. What we have done, we have bought into a doctrine that diminishes not only the role of the female, but the worthiness of the female. And that is where the chaos come in. When chaos comes from money in this society, the most chaos comes from not recognizing and respecting the divinity of the female. The female divinity is to be respected to the point where in our hearts we bow to them. Why? because if it were not for the female, there would be no life. All life came from a female womb in Africa, but there's no mention of a male seed being in that womb. Wisdom is dark because the womb is dark, not because the female is, because the womb is dark. And it does not become light until its birth. So when we relate, or we talk about femininity, masculinity, when we talk about the balance, whether it be Tahut and Mayat, or whether it be Abraham and Sarah, we're talking about feminine energy that's a balance. That's all we're talking about. It's not about who is the breadwinner. That has nothing to do with it at all. Nothing to do with it at all. So let's keep in mind that order does not come. It is impossible to bring order into existence without recognizing the divinity of the female or the feminine energy, either way you want to put it. I hope that helps. Thank you. Thank you for indulging me, George.
Well, Reb, in conclusion, I agree with everything that stated. Whether we're looking at a situation from a physical aspect or a spiritual aspect, there has to be some degree of balance. And the part of harmony, how we deal with each other's interpretation of life. Just the harmony part, because balance and harmony, they may not be the same. However, they can complement one another when we operate in a balanced kind of arena. Thank you.
Our interpretation of balance, without looking at the spiritual aspects of it, when we talk about balance, colloquially, or sort of in this material world, people have a problem separating balance from equality. Balance and equality are two different things. We can be in the material world, you can be balanced. I'm sorry, you can be balanced and not equal. My kids, I don't deal with them the same way I do with the other. There's no equality in that. I don't deal with them the same way. I deal with them based upon their personalities. And when I deal with them based upon their personality, it is not an equal response. It is a balanced response. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So if it's a balanced response, it doesn't matter as long as you do it that way in the material world. In the spiritual world, the difference between balance and harmony is that you have to be functioning on the same frequency of the universe. And there is no way possible for anyone to function within the same frequency of the universe if the divinity of femininity is not embraced. If femininity is not seen for what it is, what it was created to be, there will be no balance. You will not function at the same frequency as the universe. It's just that simple. Or that, I don't know, maybe it is complicated, I don't know. I think simplicity is relative sometimes.
Right. Well, if I may,
Brother George, thank you for indulging me, allowing me. And George, I hope, Watson, I hope I helped you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
yeah, and both Pastor and George, we speak about harmony, but it talks about just, being in one accord. You know what I mean? In terms of a pleasing arrangement. So again, when we, refer to balance, what is that arrangement? And I know that we've, talked about seeing things come to the light, with regards to, our desires, our meditations. And so again, it's bringing us back, to creation, is bringing us back to relationships. And this is, where I was speaking in reference to, the places where we reside, but being in one accord, being in harmony, is an important principle. And I think we all still are, growing and evolving, in terms of what is the scriptures, what is the sayings or utterances speaking to us personally and also corporately. Are there any questions or comments that anyone else have with regards to what we've talked about thus far, as far as the principles of Mayat? And if not, Ron, I'd just like to look at reciprocity if we can.
George,
Yes, question.
sorry.
see, Kathy, is the 7 chakras the same as the 7 principles? Am I saying it right?
Okay, no. Well, it's not the same. I think a little earlier, Pastor was speaking on it, and we were talking about Mayat and the chakras. Basically, deals more. I want to say, I don't want to say with the metaphysics or the science, but I know it's 2 separate entities. I don't, believe personally that they're the same, but they all have its relationship. And Pastor, I don't know if you can assist on that, but I don't see it being the same exactly in terms of the chakras, principles, and the Mayat.
I think Ron addressed that when he talked about there being intertwined, that the chakras are inclusive of these principles that we're talking about. As far as matching them, one to this and one to that, that's a different story. But Ron, would you repeat, if you will, what you said about the chakras? I think that was you or Audrey one. I don't know.
Well, it's all talking about energy. It's all talking about internal energy and who we are. It's all talking about truth. And so you can't separate them any more than you can separate those 7 chakras, chakra number 1 from chakra number 7. You can't separate them. You can't separate these principles. You can't separate justice from truth. These things can't be separated because it's all talking about energy, and it's talking about your desire to see truth and to become the recognize that we are all creators. We're one, and we're Elohim at the same time. So none of this can be separated. So yeah, I think if you look at them, you'll see where they interrelate. I agree with what you said, Pastor. I don't see how at least I don't see it, that you can take one and say this chakra matches this and this chakra matches that. I think they're all just a part of that same energy that we're studying now. If that makes sense at all.
Yeah. Hopefully, does that answer?
Does that make sense, Kat?
Yes. Yes, thank you.
And what it makes me think about, Ron, again, is when we talk about the internal, and we say, I think the scripture was speaking about, and this is another scripture came to my mind, where it says, don't you know that your body is the temple of the Holy Ghost and the Spirit of God dwells in you? So if it's in us, you know what I mean, then we can't separate anything from everything, but it's all in us. And so I don't know if that may have any.
Well, Another way of saying it to me is we are always talking about how repetitive the scriptures are. The scriptures is about us finding truth in ourselves, and it uses different lessons and different pictures for us to see these truths. So the same way you can study Abraham, you could look at Lot, or you could look at Noah, or what's the other boy's name? Any of the patriarchs, or any of the any of the characters in scripture,
Abraham,
and you can find the same truths in them. Well, you see what I mean? So it's all talking about principles of truth, and it helps you discover those things in you, those energy fields in you, those desires in you, those, and we in doing so, we understand who we are. We understand our feminine energy. We understand our masculinity, and the creation part of it is it opens up, enlightens us into more scripture. Look at where we're starting. Look at where we are now. And as we change, and as we grow, and as we create within ourselves, we also having an effect on the world. And that world, as we are seeing, is internal. So as we look at this thing and think that see, as some may see that this is chaotic, to us it's not. This isn't chaotic. It is it's stirring the batter, so that when you pour it into the bowl, it's going to be smooth. It won't be lumpy. So it looks a certain way now, but we know what this is, and that's going back to the truth and recognizing who you are. That's what keeps that vision clear to you.
The only reason that there's, go ahead, Barbara.
I was going to add a little bit more about the chakras to see if I can add some more clarity to what Ron has already said, as well as what's been said before. The chakras only mean, as Ron said, energy. It's called a chakra because it means a spinning wheel of energy, or an energy center. And our bodies are have a natural electromagnetic frequency, and it prefers to resonate with a certain electromagnetic frequency. The problem is when we have miscommunication within the body, when we store up memories and beliefs that are out of sync with what you called resonating with the universe faster. When we store those things up, when we store up energy of anxiety, hate, dislike, all of that, our bodies can store that energy, and that means then that we don't resonate again with that electromagnetic frequency that the body prefers to resonate with. And so that stored energy causes our bodies to be out of sync, be out of tune, be off key, if you will, whatever one of those things help to describe it. So the chakras are means of, they're just energy. The other thing about chakras is the lower three chakras are considered masculine in nature, and they are a call to action. In other words, they are tied to more material kinds of things. The higher three chakras are feminine in nature, and so they are associated with how we reflect, we self-reflect, self-reflection and spiritual aspects of our lives. The heart chakra is what balances the feminine and the masculine. In other words, each one is important. It has its role, and again, I'm talking about the chakras, and it's the heart chakra that balances it to keep one so that it's not overshadowed by the other, or it's not off-centered by the other. Anyway, they're just types of energy. They also relate to different organs in the body that we don't need to talk about at this point. But the bird's eye view is that the root chakra talks about basic trust. The sacral chakra talks about sexual creativity. Then there's the solar plexus, and then the heart chakra is the one that talks about love and healing. Remember, I said that that's the one that balances the masculine energies which relate to action. I got to do something. I got to take care of my family. I got to whatever. And then the heart chakra, that love and healing chakra, balances it when the female, and I'm sorry, I mean female, feminine energy starts thinking about, okay, self-reflecting and spiritual kinds of things. And that balance is not necessarily equity. But sometimes it takes more of that feminine energy offset and balance that masculine energy. And sometimes it takes more of that masculine energy to do the same with the feminine energy, to remind that that feminine energy. Well, you know, I understand you're thinking about what's best for everybody. I understand that, but know at the same time, these are the kinds of things that we've got to do while we are doing that, because we are still tied physically to this world. So they just kind of offset each other. The crown chakra relates to spirituality, and the third eye chakra has to do with awareness, being open to who you are, understanding the nuances of what your essence is, and what that can provide and what that can create in terms of your relationship, not only with each other, but with the community and with the world. And then that throat chakra has to do with communication, just the same thing. So everything, the chakras are all about balance, but what George is talking about is all about balance and harmony as well. They just do it in a slightly different way, because they are from different parts of different cultures. But the truth of it is what we're looking for. What does the truth say? And if you look at it that way, then you can see truth even in the chakras. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, everybody. Wow. Go ahead, Pastor.
The reason we're doing it one by one, the way Barbara was delineating the chakras, is because we live in a place of time. If time did not exist in our world, then we would see it all at once. We would experience it all at once, as opposed to, talking about them in sequence. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But as Barbara was talking, what I saw with my eye, apparently, was a continuous flow without any separation between it at all. And that continuous flow is what keeps us balanced, keeps us in the place where we should be, mentally, emotionally, etc. And the more we are aware of that, and the more we submit to the truth of that, the more we are reflective of Elohim.
Does that help with Kathy? I'm sorry, I didn't ask that.
Oh,
Kathy,
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. It helped me.
Help me.
Me too.
Well,
And me too.
and again, Ron, and and all of us, I think I mentioned the last one with reciprocity. And it talks about, it's the reality of what comes around, goes around. And it says that there is a motion, a rhythm of cause and effect, a give and a take, a forward and backward to every aspect of creation. So, what is the reality of what comes around and goes around? And I was just,
Here up in the flow, George, is that what you're talking about?
yes. Ebb and flow.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, was someone saying something?
Ms.
I just
Bob?
said yes to George.
Okay. And so, again, as it was stated earlier, all of it is the oneness of principles that the goddess Maya, was referring to. And what does this all relate to in terms of the 42 laws? And I think one of the reasons, why we wanted to discuss this, or I wanted to share it, because it basically was dealing with the 10 Commandments. And again, 8 of the commandment laws that Moses provided, there were 8 that was actually from the 42 laws of Maya. And I know at another time, Pastor, I know you was mentioning that we may get into having some discussion about going back to creation or going back and looking at the laws. But for the purpose of the 7 principles, that's what I wanted to share, in my reading and continual understanding and spiritual enlightenment. But I realized that this is the earliest source of spiritual and moral instructions, that were given to us. And as I mentioned earlier, again, the origin of existence is something that I personally strive for, but at the same time, more enlightenment has been shared tonight. So I just like to, thank all of you for just giving me the opportunity to share some things that's on my heart, but more importantly, to be in oneness in terms of how we're able to share our love, give our love, and bring loving kindness and balance to humanity. Are there any other questions or comments? Or if not, Ron, I'm gonna turn it back over.
Well, so I like to mention the one about justice again for a minute. We because we were looking at African history, and we were looking at a book talking about the spirituality of man, right? Spirituality came before there were religions, and justice to me kind of stands out because it speaks to me without me looking at what it's supposed to mean. And what I'm saying is, could it be that we're all here because there is no justice in the world? And I'm talking from a spiritual perspective. There is no equality. There is no opportunity to see God through religion. There is no opportunity for women to be heard and to be felt. And there is no opportunity for people of color to have anything. So maybe when we talk about the ancestors and pulling all this together, maybe that injustice, or that seeking of justice and balance and truth and all of that comes together because we are the ancestors and the ancestors are us. And pulling all this together in the present is what is the attempt of that spirituality to reach for truth and bring justice and balance back to where there has not been any throughout the age of mankind.
Yeah.
So all I'm saying is this energy that we keep talking about may be us feeding off of energy that has been in the earth waiting for someone to open themselves up so that it can be heard.
Um,
And George might have said this already, but he was talking about equity, justice as it relates to equity. And that equity means you know, certain basic things we all have access to
Mhm.
as humans, not only on the physical planet, but from the spiritual perspective as well. But even if we start with the physical is where most of the people that we know, a lot of the people we know, that's what they see from that perspective of the eyes. But we can see that there is no justice when people don't have equal access to voter rights. There is no justice when people don't have access to health or food or shelter or water, because there's even places where water is that which is the largest single factor on this earth. The people live in drought areas and they have no access to it. So part of what we're saying, I guess, is we're speaking that justice in the being. I think this is what you just talked about, Ron. And we're speaking it into being so that it's captured and multiplied in the macro, because it reminds the universe that there are some of us who understand and realize what the inequity is, the injustice is, and that we choose to align ourselves with justice, with what the universe says is justice. Even if we start just with the basic material stuff. Because if you had all you needed, I had all I needed to eat, whatever, where is the need for animosity if we don't worry about anger and hate and greed and all that stuff getting in the pot and stirring that up and causing things to be off balance? Thanks.
So I know we are close to policy. So the things that Barbara described are all injustices. Now, how does that relate spiritually? Justice is conformity to righteousness. And conforming to righteousness is a spiritual desire. It is totally spiritual in nature. And the correction of all those things that Barbara was talking about is a result of our conforming to righteousness. So when we talk about bringing harmony, bringing balance, we are talking about not only us conforming to righteousness, but that energy that's put forth, that's put in the macro, because we are conforming to righteousness, it's what have a positive effect on what Barbara is talking about. It changes all of that. Can you see that? Or you understand what I'm trying to say, at least?
I have a question.
I understand what you're saying, because a lot of that is driven by intent. Righteousness there's an intent to be righteous.
Yes.
So. Sorry, Evelyn.
Well, no, I was just thinking, so once we embrace everything that has been taught tonight, I forgot my train of thought, but it's something dealing with once we embrace everything that's being taught and put out in the macro, that's when we know that we Elohim, or that's when we embrace the fact that we are Elohim. I just lost my train of thought, that's all.
I don't
I'll
think
stop right.
Go ahead, Barbara.
I'll stop right there. That's me, Evelyn. But go ahead.
I don't think that that's when we know we're Elohim. If we don't embrace that we are Elohim, we never get to that point. We talk until we embrace that we are Elohim, righteousness is what the church talk about. And the church interprets the poor you will have with you always is talking about no matter what you do to help people, some gonna be poor. That's not what that scripture means, but that's how the church interprets it. That scripture is speaking to poor in spirit, which means that you have not understood or become aware of who you are. There will be people who are not aware of who they are, but it does not mean that they have to dominate the society. When righteousness dominates the society, that is when everything begins to change. Does that help you, Evelyn?
Very much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Or when we embrace all of these principles and they are a part of us, then that's when we know we are Elohim. I mean, we know it intellectually, and we know it, we sort of know it as part of our being. But when we can embrace all of this and put it into practice, and that's a way of definitely knowing.
Yeah, definitely knowing that we're Elohim. However, I see this, you know it to yourself, because these are the results of embracing that you are Elohim. Now that we embrace that we're Elohim, right? So we start seeing what that looks like. These principles are aspects of Elohim. We began to see what our spiritual, for lack of a better word, personality is.
Mhm.
Can you see that? The attributes of our personality? They are already there. We just have to see them and to embrace them because they are so deep, they're buried so deep inside of us. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think, yeah. We embrace them, but we don't realize how fully we embrace them.
In addition, the others will see the manifestations of those principles. They may not know how to define it, or may not know exactly what each one is, but they will see the difference. And so I think I agree with you, Pastor. Knowing that you're Elohim has to be the number one thing first of all. We should not have to see things with our physical eye to have come to that understanding. We should trust the insight of the eye to know beyond the shadow of a doubt that that's who we are. And then what happens is those principles are things that we act on a day-to-day basis, in the way that we talk, in the way that we walk, in our experiences, in our interactions with each other, with our experiences and interactions with our community. And when we come across with, man, that's a just woman right there, a just man right there, or nothing takes that person off. That's when you know that others recognize. That's the reflecting back of those principles to you, so that you know it. So you can't do the principles first and do Elohim second. You got to know that you know first.
I remember when I started this journey, and I remember laying hands on people for healings. I remember those who laid their hand on people who had transitioned and brought them back alive, brought them back to this life. I remember all of those things. But I also remember this. I remember the Creator said, now that you're able to do these things, Now you're going back to see why you are able to do it. And since that time, I have not had those kinds of experiences that I had with bringing healing to people. So what am I saying? I am saying that we fully embrace that we are Elohim. And we will carry it back to beginning to see what Elohim looks like. As we look at the beginning of spirituality of everything in this earth realm, with the kingdom of the Cushites, the 12, we came forth with that. That was showing us who Elohim or what Elohim is. But once we embrace it, we need to know what it looks like, don't we? And what it looks like are these principles that we're talking about, and what we have talked about in the past as well. And we will, at some point, look at the 42, because those are a part of the personality of Elohim. That's who we are. These principles are not something that we memorize academically. These principles are something that we recognize. Instead, we recognize them as being who we are. These principles are reflective of who we were created to be. I'm done. Ron? Did we lose Ron?
I had to, it dropped me, so I had to come back in through the phone. Yeah, but I'm back. Great discussion. Questions or comments, anyone? Okay. Again, I want to remind everybody that we will not meet next week. And have a safe week. Enjoy the holidays. And look forward to seeing you guys in 2 weeks. Okay?
Ron?
Thanks. Yes, ma'am.
I just need clarity. We're not meeting this Saturday, Sunday, or Monday, but we will be meeting the next following Saturday.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
We've gotten in the habit of not meeting on holiday weekends.
Okay.
So yeah, so we'll kind of hold to that and not meet this weekend coming. Okay. And if there's anyone, because we forgot to mention it yesterday, so if anyone you can think of that may not have this information, may not be here tonight, please pass it forward for us, please.
Okay.
Kevin is important. That's why we do that. So,
okay. Yeah. All right. Have a good week, everyone. Enjoy.
All right.
Thanks
Have a
again.
good one and safe one.
Happy
Be
Thanksgiving.
safe.